I'm David. Thank you for joining me in this how to play video of Pandemic, which has celebrated its 10th anniversary recently. This is part of our project to do videos on the top 100 family games as rated by Board Game Geek users. Behind me is a sample of the top 20 on that top 100 list. And as of October 2019, Pandemic is in the top 10 of the family games. And then it's also in the top 100 overall and strategy games. If you haven't had a chance, please check out our review video and our playthrough. In fact, on the playthrough, we play the heroic setting with all 6 epidemic cards, the hardest setting, and you can see how we did. For this how to play, we're going to do the introductory setting where we only play with 4 epidemic cards, which you'll see in a moment. So, I'm going to use the rulebook here is a guide if you want to follow along. The object of Pandemic is a cooperative game. We're members of a disease fighting team, and I'm going to show a setup for 2 players. And we're trying to save humanity from diseases that could wipe out the Earth, or wipe out humans anyways on the Earth. As a famous comedian says, the Earth will still be here even after humans go. Anyway, let's take a look at the setup. So the first thing you do is that you're going to set out the board as you see here. You have disease cubes in the colors of black, yellow, blue, and red, which I've put in here in these component collector trays. Then you're going to place Outbreak and Cure markers at the bottom of the board. It shows it right here. So notice I have it on this side. When you cure a disease, you'll move it up, and then if you eradicate it, and I'll explain what that means in a moment, you'll turn it over. But for now, you're going to put we have not cured any of the 4 diseases yet in different colors, and it's just metaphorical for whatever diseases they could be in real life. But that's how it sets up there. Next, each player will be given a roll card and a pawn. So let me show you the 7 rolls that you can be dealt. Now what we like to play where we choose rolls. But if you want to play according to the rules, you're going to shuffle up these 7 cards and then deal 1 to each player. And then each player will also get a little cheat sheet here card with the actions that you can do on your turn on the front and back. So each roll has different powers. So for instance, if you're playing the scientists, basically it allows you kind of to break a rule in the game. You may only need 4 cards of the same color to do the discover a cure action. Normally you need 5 cards, so this is really helpful to cure diseases quicker. Or this one here, the medic, remove all cubes of 1 color when doing treat disease. Normally it takes 1 action to remove 1 cube, but he can remove all the cubes in that space with 1 action, so he's very helpful. Also, when he's moving through a city where there is a cured disease, he can remove those cubes for free without spending an action, so he's very powerful. And you'll see that there's other ones as well. So let's just say Julie is going to be the scientist. She'll get her action card here, and when you're playing 2 players, you can use 2 of them and have them both cards like that, one flip to the other side. And I'm going to be the medic, which I will show in a minute. Here's her pawn. Here will be my pawn, so I'll just put it right here for now. And then we're going to place her pawns in Atlanta, where the Center for Disease Control is. And you're also going to place a research center in Atlanta as well. That's where we have to go to cure any disease once we get enough cards. And you can build other research centers in other cities around the board, but that's the only one that we start with. And then we're going to deal so many cards to each player. So in a 2-player game, I'll show on the other camera here, each player will get 4 cards, but if you're playing with 4 players, each player with 2 cards. Now what are the player cards? Well, here are the player cards shown by color. So you'll see there's so many blue. There's 3, 6, 9, 12 blue, and I assume there's the same amount here of red, yellow, and black. And we're going to shuffle all these together, but I just wanted to show you that these cards, these player cards, correspond to the colors of city on the board. So you can see that North America and Europe are blue, that South America and half of Africa is in yellow, most of East Asia and Australia is in red, and then you have part of Europe, Asia, North Africa, and the Middle East, and South Asia is black. So there's actually a card for each city. So for instance, here's Montreal, which corresponds to Montreal here. You'll see this will matter if you want to travel to those cities. But you'll also see that in the player deck, there are events. And there are 5 different events. And these events can be played at any time, on a player's turn, on your turn, or another player's turn. There's only one exception when you can't play them, which I'll explain when that happens. But basically, they give you different things you can do that will help you along the way. So normally you don't have to worry about this until you are drawn into your hand. But for instance, this says here, skip the next infect city step. Do not flip over an infection card. So in other words, this is what help you stop the spread of disease for at least one turn. So you're going to take all these cards, shuffle them up. You're not going to do anything with the epidemic cards yet. You'll see there's 6 of them here. So you'll shuffle them up. So you can watch me shuffle here. Again, I wanted to show you what was in the deck before we shuffle it and how it corresponds to the game board. Also, the colors correspond to the diseases. So you notice there's blue cities, blue disease cubes, and a blue cure. So again, in case I didn't point out, here are the blue cubes, here are the blue cities, here's a blue cure marker, which shows that it's not cured yet. And then, of course, you see me shuffling the cards that are also blue. All right, so since we're playing with 2 players, you want to do this step before you put the epidemic cards in. So here's my player card, by the way. So Julie will get 4 and I'll get 4 because we're playing 2 players. Again, in case you forgot where I got that, that's on this little chart here, depending on the number of players you have. So you reveal the cards, and you can play open hands since it's a cooperative game, and that's what we do. So you see I got an event and 2 yellow. Now your hand limit is 7. You can never have more than 7 cards. So if you draw an 8th card, you must either play an event, if you have one, or discard a card in your hand. So once you get your 8th card, you must discard a card or play an event. So right now I have 2 yellow, 1 black, and I have Bogota, Buenos Aires, Delphi, and this event. So if you look at this event here, if I play it, draw, look at, and rearrange the top 6 cards of the infection deck, put them back on top. So this would be helpful to try to prevent what are called outbreaks. And by the way, here's the infection deck, which we'll get to in a moment. But you'll see that the infection deck also corresponds to a city and the color, because this is where we're going to be placing cubes to show disease outbreaks. But for now, right, we're giving each player their 4 cards in a 2-player game. So Julie also has yellow, also drew an event, and has 1 red. So between the 2 of us, we didn't get any blue cards, which is okay. And so she has an event here that says, add 1 research station to any city. That's very nice because it usually would take an action. In that card, so if I wanted to build a research station in Sydney, I'd have to be there, play this card to build it, but this event allows me to put it anywhere I want, even if I'm not even there. All right, so each player has their 4 cards in a 2-player game. So now we go next to, so that was, oh, I just noticed here on the rule book, you see how I went down from 1, 2, and 4? I was supposed to go to 3, and I just noticed that right now. It's okay that I went out of order because we're going to use the infection deck. This step doesn't affect what happened here in 4. We are going to do step 5 in a moment here, but here is the player cards here, the player deck. I'm going to put them here for now. We got to do something with that, with the epidemic cards here in just a moment. But first, let's do step 3. So step 3 is that we need to do the starting infections. So this is our goal here, is to cure these diseases. So we're going to infect 9 cities. So we're going to draw 9 cards out of the infection deck. The first 3 are going to get 3 cubes, the second 3 will get 2 cubes, and the last 3 will get 1 cube. And then it's important that we remember that the 9 cards that we draw go face up here on the discard pile. So let's do that real quick. So here are the 3 cities that get 3 cubes. Kinshasa, Sao Paulo. So the reason why it's bad to have 3 cubes is because once it gets a 4th cube, you can get what's called an outbreak. And I haven't explained yet how you lose. So right here in Africa, and 3 in, oh, I'm doing the wrong color. So you got to make sure you match the colors. Mumbai. It's possible for colors, for different colors to go into other regions. For instance, if there's an outbreak here in Kolkata, it can spread the black disease into the red area, or vice versa, red into the black area. So these 3 have gotten 3 disease cubes. Now we're going to do the cities that get 2. Milan, Miami, and Buenos Aires. Okay, Miami gets 2. Buenos Aires gets 2. So right away, I'm a little concerned about the yellow disease being too strong. And I'll explain why that's a problem. Okay, so Milan is right here. So now we've done our cities that get 2 cubes each. Now we're going to do the cities that get 1 cube each. Wow. So much yellow. This is not good. And because it's a game where you have cards, you can get unlucky, or you can get lucky. So Khartoum or Tome, Los Angeles gets 1, and Paris gets 1. So by the way we drew here, we didn't get any red diseases. Now they're in the deck. So we've infected the first 9 cities. We know that yellow is a major problem right now, and how spread out it is and how strong the disease is. Blue is the second strongest, but black can get an outbreak, which I'll explain in a moment because there's 3 cubes there. All right, so let's do prepare the player deck. So that's part 5 here. So you're going to decide what difficulty to play. So we're going to play 4 for the first game. 5 is medium level and 6 is a heroic level. So we're going to just do 4. So what you do, this is why it's important to go in order here, that we gave each player their cards first, because you don't want to put the epidemic cards into the deck and then give their players their cards. So we got to, since we're only going to play with 4 epidemics, we pull 4 out. The other 2 go away. And by the way, the rolls that we didn't get go away as well. So we're going to create, as best as possible, 4 equal decks, and then slip in the epidemic cards into those. In fact, I'll do that right now, and I'm going to shuffle up each one individually, and then they'll go on top of each other. That way, the epidemics are spread out. Okay, so this will be the top. Again, you see I'm shuffling it up again, even though I threw the epidemic in there. I'm going to make sure that it's divvied up as evenly as possible. But because I'm shuffling up each quarter here, it's possible that the epidemic could be on the bottom on this one and then be on the top of this one here. I'll explain what happens when you draw when you draw these cards in a moment, and what special rule you got to pay attention to if you draw 2 epidemics in a row. Oops. Okay. And then last. So now it's set up. Let's see what part 6 is. So we prepared the player deck. Now we're going to begin the play. And so the basic actions is that a player does 4 actions, draw 2 player cards, and then infect cities with the infection deck. And that's the basic turn order. Trying to remember one thing I was going to say. Oh, so this is how you win and lose the game. You win the game, which I've already mentioned, if you cure all 4 diseases. You don't have to eradicate the diseases. I'll explain what that means in a moment. You just have to cure them. But this is how you lose. You get 8 outbreaks. A worldwide panic happens. Not enough disease cubes are left when needed. So in other words, the disease spreads too much. So when we have to go into these trays here, and we can't, see, I'm worried about yellow. There's only so much left in here. We've got so much on the border already. We're going to want to treat yellow first, because if we draw too many yellow out of here and there's none left, we lose. Or if there's not enough player cards are left when needed. So in other words, if we can't draw 2 player cards, we're out of time. So to go over that again, when we have to draw from this deck, if we can't draw 2 on a player's turn, we lose. If this moves down to 8 outbreaks, if we get to the skull here, which you can see better right here on this screen, if it moves down to here, we lose. Or if we draw, when it comes time to either draw red, black, blue, or yellow, and there's not enough cubes there, we lose as well. And now these research centers stay here because we can build even more research centers. Right now we have 1 on the board in Atlanta, and we can build up to 5 more if we'd like. All right, so that's a setup. So like I said, players have 4 actions on their turn, and then after they're done completing their actions, they're going to draw 2 cards, and then after they draw 2 cards, we're going to infect cities. But when you're drawing player cards, something can happen. But first, let's go over the actions that a player can take. So just for context here, all players start in Atlanta. So Julie is the scientist, and I'm the medic. And so players can determine who goes first. There might be something in the rules about who goes first. I don't remember, but that's a minor rule. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It might be in here somewhere, but I'm not going to bother looking for it right now and make you wait while I'm looking for it. All right, so here we go. It's a minor rule. So this side of the card is that we can do... Actually, the better thing to do is show you the rules first. Here are the actions that players can take. First thing is move actions, which is this side of the card. Okay, see how it corresponds. It doesn't say move actions here, but that's what it says in the rule. And then you have other actions, which is the other side of the card, which isn't labeled here. So let's take a look at the different moves you can do. Because if there's no diseases in your city, you're going to want to move someplace to do that, or if you want to cure a disease. So, because I'm the medic, I want to get over to Sao Paulo to remove these 3 yellow. And because the medic, with 1 action, I can remove all 3 with 1 action. That's ideal. So I think what I'm going to do, you'll see here with the move action, I can go across the ocean, or drive or ferry across the ocean. So where I'm at, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. If I want, just by counting. Or I can move here to Miami, okay? Or I could take a direct flight, which is what I'm going to do. I could discard a city card to move to the city named on the card. So I want to go to Buenos Aires. I'm going to discard Buenos Aires and move there. The other way you can use a flight is a charter flight. If you discard the city card that matches the city you are in, move to any city. So this is really powerful. So if I'm already in Buenos Aires and I play Buenos Aires, I can go anywhere I want on the board, any city. That's only if I have a card that matches the city I'm in. And then the last thing I can do, I can move from a city with a research station to any other city that has a research station. So that's one reason why to build more research stations, is that you can shuttle between each one. Now the other actions you can do, again, that's moving around. So we can build a research station, so you have to discard a city card that matches the city that you're in. You could also treat a disease. So you have to be in a research center. So right now, we start in Atlanta. Now it is possible If Julie would have gotten lucky and drew 4 of a kind, 4 yellow or 4 red, for instance, she could have treated a disease right away because her power is, so she only needs 4 cards instead of 5. But typically, when you're playing a game, you're going to need 5 cards to treat a disease. So which means as you're running around stopping the spread of diseases, you're going to pick up new cards at the end of your turn. And then you're going to hopefully get a set of 5 and then return to a research station. So right now we can't cure a disease because neither of us have 5 of a kind. Okay, the other thing is to share knowledge. So this is very important not to mess this up, because if you play this wrong, the game will be too easy. If you're in the same city with another player and either one of you has a card that matches that city, you can give that player your card. So for example, if I was down here in Buenos Aires and I didn't fly there, I kept my card, okay? And Julie was down here in Lima, she can, well, Bogota, she moves 1 here. Then she says, I want your Buenos Aires card. We're in the same city. I share knowledge. I give it to her. So it goes from my hand to her hand because I want to give her as many yellows, 4 yellow, because she only needs 4, whereas I would need 5 with my character. So that would be a good move to do that. But again, we have to be in the same city to share knowledge. Very important rule. I think the first time we played this 10 years ago, because this is the newer edition, we owned the original edition at first and we had to upgrade to the new edition so that it worked with the new expansions. I think we did that wrong the first time we played. Well, anyway, so back to the other action that you can do is that you can discover a cure. So you go to a research station. Oh, I messed up. Treat disease. Remember I said that that's where you can cure disease? That's right down here. Discover a cure. So if you're in any city research station, you typically discard 5 cards to cure it. Now, treat a disease, that's what you do on your turn. So you're going to see that right now. So here I am in Atlanta. Okay, I'm going to play my Buenos Aires card because we got to get yellow right away. It goes into the discard area. So I fly there. And because I'm the medic, in 1 action, I can cure all the diseases there, all the cubes. I can remove them all. So my second action is removing those 2 cubes. Third action is moving here by driving there. Fourth action, I remove these 3 cubes. So my turn is done. Right? So I prevented those from getting bad. Now I really would like to get to Sasha to get those 3 out of the way, but maybe Julie will do that. So let me show you an alternative turn. So instead of doing that, I didn't take let's say Julie went first. Now I'll show you the difference between someone with my power and someone who doesn't have that power. So Julie, let's say, goes first. She's going to move here to Miami. She drives down. She cures 1 cube for 1 action, cures a 2nd cube for a 3rd action, and for a 4th action, she maybe moves down there. So most players can't cure diseases as fast as the medic. They need 1 action to cure a disease, to remove 1 cube. Now the only exception is if we cured yellow, in other words, somebody turned in 5 cards or 4 cards with the scientist, and we cured yellow, that means now all players, when they go to a city, can remove all cubes of that color of a cured disease. So that means, let's say yellow was already cured. Julie went down here with 1 action. Her 2nd action, she removes all the cubes. 3rd action, she can go here. 4th action, she's here. And maybe on her next turn, she'll be able to remove all 3 of those cubes because it's cured. Now, what does it mean when it's eradicated? That means that if we successfully cured it, and then we move all yellow on the board, there's no yellow diseases on the board, it's eradicated. So that means when we infect a city later on on each player's turn, yellow cubes won't be placed. But you don't have to do this to win. You just only have to cure all 4 like this, but eradicating it gives you some breathing room when you don't have to place cubes of a disease that you'd have to waste your time curing, or removing, I should say. By the way, I forgot to mention that the infection rate is placed here on the 2 in the setup. Forgot to mention that. All right, so those are the actions that you can do. So let's say I did do that action when I went to Buenos Aires with my medic. First action, second action, curing. Third action, moving here. Fourth action, removing those. So you'll see, did I have 3 cards? I could play this event if I want to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to draw now at the end of my turn. Again, I'll show you the turn order again, in case you forgot what I'm referring to. I did my 4 actions. Now I'm going to draw 2 cards. So, first card I draw is Chicago, so I have a blue. Next card I draw is another event. So remember I mentioned earlier, when can't you play events? You cannot play an event when you draw a player card such as Epidemic. So if I draw an Epidemic, I must finish the Epidemic first. And then after the Epidemic, I could play a card. So if you draw an Epidemic, you can't say, oh wait, I want to do this, play this event card. No, the Epidemic comes first. So in other words, if you draw one of the green cards. So that turn, I got lucky. Didn't draw any of the green cards. Let's see where they are in the deck here. So Julie would draw these 2 on her turn. I draw these 2 on my next turn. Julie's second turn, she draw those. My third turn, I draw these. And then on Julie's third turn, she would get an Epidemic. So we would actually have a bunch of turns before we get our first Epidemic. So, but I'll explain that in a moment. Let's first do the Infect Phase, as if we're playing the game right now. And I drew, remember, I drew a Chicago and another event card. So right now I have 5 cards. Still don't have any red here, but that's okay. So the next thing you do, you draw as many Infect cards as the infection rate right here. So you notice it goes all the way up to 4. That's because every time you get an Epidemic, it's going to move up. But in the introductory game, there's only 4 cards in here. So the most that we're going to do is draw 3 cards. 3 Infect cards at the end of a player's turn. If we were playing with 6 Epidemic cards, the heroic level, you could eventually get up to 4 Epidemics. So we draw our 2 cards. Essen gets 1 cube. So when you infect, you're only placing 1 cube each. And Johannesburg also gets 1 yellow. So that was the end of my turn as the medic. Now Julie goes. So Julie we're worried about here in Mumbai and Kinshasa. So she is going to try to get all the way over to, let's see what card she has. She could place, so what she's going to do, she's going to place a research center in Kinshasa, and she's going to play this event. Now this does not cost an action to place an event. She places it. She's going to place a research station in Mumbai. She's going to use the action where you can charter a shuttle flight between research stations. So she's going to do that as an action. She goes all the way here to Mumbai. So her first action was moving there. And then she's going to cure all 3 of these. So first action, moving there. Second action, removing that disease cube. Third action, removing that one. Fourth action, removing that. So now we removed all 3 cubes. You may be wondering, why am I trying to prevent going after these cities with 3 cubes? Because when you get your 4th cube, you'll get outbreaks, which I'll show in a moment. So Julie's done. She draws 2 cards. She got a red and another yellow. So it only needs 1 more yellow to go to a research center to cure it. Now we go back, now we infect, draw 2 infect cards. We get 1 cube in Cairo and 1 cube in Montreal. So that was, each player just did a turn there. Now let's pretend that we didn't draw a cube in Montreal. Let's say we drew an Epidemic. Okay, so we drew an epidemic instead of Montreal. So let me put that back on top. Did I put it back on top? Oh, not here. I'm sorry. I'm reversing it here. Cairo doesn't happen. Johannesburg doesn't happen. Julie did not draw Khartoum. Instead, she draws an epidemic. All right, so what do we do? So I reversed what happened on Julie's turn. Julie did draw Tapai, but on her second card, she drew an epidemic. Now, one little rule to remember is that when you draw an epidemic card on a player's turn, that's considered the second card. You don't draw a third card to replace that epidemic. And it is possible to draw two epidemics. So what I'm about to show you how it works is that you carry out the first epidemic, then you will do the second epidemic immediately afterwards. So the first thing you do, again, you look at the card here. Should we move the infection rate marker one space up? So you saw here it's on a 2. Fortunately, it stays at a 2. But let's say this is our, in fact, I did draw too many cards, didn't I? Essen, Los Angeles, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, right, 1, 2, 3, 6. I guess Johannesburg needed to be infected. Did I not draw enough? I don't remember what happened there. Okay, I apologize for that. So anyway, we increase it. Let's say it was already at 2 because we drew an epidemic card on the before. Say it goes up to 3. So that means we're going to draw 3 cards here now. So this goes here. The next thing you do is you infect. You draw from the bottom. So we're doing step 2 here. We're doing step 2 where we infect. You draw from the bottom of the deck, and you place 3 cubes of that color in that city. So in Seoul, we're placing 3 red. Now, the third is that we intensify. We take the discard pile, shuffle it, and place it on top before we do the infection phase. So this is really dangerous here because we just drew Seoul. If we draw it again, we're going to get an outbreak. And because we're pretending that we're on the 3rd infection rate, we're going to be drawing 3 cards. In other words, somewhere down in the deck here, this is our second epidemic card. So we already moved it up 1, 2, actually it would be our 3rd epidemic card. So we would already have drawn 3 of those. This would be our 3rd one to get it up to here. But anyway, so here we are. We're going to draw 3. Essen gets 1. So this is why it's dangerous, because you're drawing now from the top of cities that might be already infected. Milan gets 1, now it's at 3. And Sao Paulo gets 1. So now you see why I went there, because I was afraid of that happening. If there would have been 3 there, we'd have gotten an outbreak. So let's pretend there was 3 there, and I didn't get there in time. Okay, let's say all I was able to do on my turn was complete Buenos Aires, and we drew Sao Paulo. So now you do not add a 4th cube. Instead, you move the outbreak marker down 1, because when you've exceeded 3 in a city, you move the outbreak marker down 1, and then you spread that disease to every nearby city. So yellow goes here, 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 and here. Notice we have a yellow and a blue spot. Now, you could get a chain reaction. Let's say Kinshasa, Lagos actually had 3, not Kinshasa. So now, when Sao Paulo infects Kinshasa, that causes a chain reaction. Now, it doesn't go back, okay? It only goes forward. So now we have a second outbreak. A cube is placed here, here, and here. So you can see that in this situation, if Sao Paulo had 3 already, and when we drew it, we added a 4th one, we infected these nearby cities, caused another chain reaction which infected these cities, which resulted in 2 outbreaks. If we get to 8, we lose. So the more epidemics that happen, the more the greater the infection rate will be. Remember, I simulated that we had drawn our 3rd one, so that's why we're drawing 3 cards here. So it's very dangerous anytime an epidemic comes up, because what you do then is you take your discard pile, shuffle it up and put it on top, which means then you're more likely to infect cities that already have diseases there. So you play the game trying to remove disease cubes until you can cure them, and if necessary, eradicate them in order to give you some breathing room. Because the reason why it's helpful to eradicate them, let's say, for instance, we managed to get rid of blue. We cured it and eradicated it, so now anytime a blue infection rate comes up, see Paris just came up, if it's eradicated, you don't place any cubes in Paris. Basically, it gives us a little breathing room there. We don't have to worry about blue anymore. Only if we had removed all blue first after we cured it. So again, you lose the game if you get 8 outbreaks. 8 outbreaks right here. If you can't draw 2 cards from the player deck, or if you go for, see right here, we don't have a lot of yellow left. If we have to place yellow and we can't, we also lose. And you win if you manage to cure all 4 diseases, whether or not they're eradicated or not. So on the back of the rule book, there's some commonly overlooked things that would be worth going over. So remember, it says here, do not draw a replacement card after drawing an epidemic card, which I mentioned. You may discover your cure at any research station. The color of its city does not need to match the disease you're curing. On your turn, you may take a card from another player if you're both in the same city. Again, and it matches the card you're taking. So that's a very important rule to not overlook, because it makes it too easy if you do it the other way around. In other words, if you just trade cards anytime in any city, that would be violating the rules. You may take any city card from the researcher. So you'll see that there is, if you're both in the same city. So you'll see that this is a great, if you're playing 3 players, this is a great card to have, because if you're in the same city, you can trade cards with the researcher, regardless of the name of the city. And then you have to check hand limit immediately after drawing a card. If you exceed 7, you must either play an event card or discard a city card, a player card. So that's Pandemic. If we get 100 likes, we will play with the expansions. We have all 3 expansions. And eventually, on the top 100 list, we'll play the dice version of this. That's down the road here. So if you haven't had a chance, please check out the playthrough where we play with 6 epidemic cards, a heroic level. You'll see how we do. And also check out the review. So I'm David.